Hi, I'm Pat Maloney with the London Free Press and lfpress.com, and with me is my boss, Editor-in-Chief Joe Rosidi. So I know I look like I didn't shave today, but I'm starting to grow a beard.
Me either.
Because I'm going for the Chip Martin beard. I'm going to grow it out and then dye it orange.
Let's all be Chip.
Yeah, I figured that's the idea. Speaking of Chip, the big story at City Hall, to no one's surprise this week, was the mayor, who on Monday morning said, "I've hired a lawyer who is a London lawyer who has advised me to no longer speak on the questions around his son's 2005 wedding reception and the federal checks that we've reported paid for it." Your thoughts on that decision?
Sure. First, you're being modest. I think we had two pretty big stories at City Hall today, and I hope we'll get to the one you were working on. But you know, it's a bit hard to talk about. It is. There's sort of lawyers on the case all over on this story, so I won't say too much. It is one strategy, what the mayor is using, the sort of clam-up strategy. Fair enough. I'm not sure it's the right strategy, but you know, he's not seeking advice from us. We asked some questions. I guess we were the first people who asked the question, but everybody's asking questions.
Yeah.
The city here in the city, the RCMP's asking questions.
And we're now a week into since we broke the story.
And I think it's fair to say that people are getting a little antsy about getting some answers.
And I sort of laughed because I've got some emails from radio people who have said, "Why are you guys not going on the radio with us? Why are you turning down our interview requests?" And I mean, the answer is fairly simple, and it's the same reason why we're not going to delve into the details here. You have very carefully lawyered all of our stories to ensure that nothing we say is inaccurate and nothing we say is unfair to the mayor.
Yeah.
So why go on the radio and humana and start babbling away and say something stupid? So
absolutely, and it's easy to start talking and lose the trail of what you're talking about. And listen, Chip,
and you get nervous. Yeah.
Chip put a lot of weeks of work into this, and you're right. We've been very, very careful, and
to be fair to the mayor and to be fair to our readers. Yeah.
Absolutely, and you know, we don't want to jeopardize all that by making mistakes that we didn't have to make.
Particularly if it's on, you know, a TV talk show that 20 people are watching, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so
we don't want to become the news. We want to.
Exactly.
We want to report the news and give people a chance to talk.
Yeah, and as I said to this radio person who emailed me yesterday, I said the stories speak for themselves. You know, that's what I think.
That's really the bottom line. The stories do speak for themselves.
So anyway, speaking of stories, we've worked on some methadone stories this week. Alex Weber and myself about an East End clinic that's, through my interviews with people connected to it, was run by people who really deeply cared about their methadone patients, liked helping them.
Felt like they were doing a good thing.
Yeah, they were doing a good thing, and it's
Absolutely.
a business. It's a business too, but all right, that's fine. This summer they stopped dispensing methadone. Now, why is that? Lots of questions around there. The lawyer of the pharmacy's owner, the lawyer's name is Faisal Joseph, who I think you'd agree is a pretty well-established lawyer in the city.
Absolutely.
He says that the landlord, and he's not the first person to say this to me, he's the first person to say it on the record. He says the landlord of that plaza said, "We will not renew your lease," which was up in the summer, unless you get rid of the methadone services.
Right.
He's in a jam. He's got to get rid of them.
Sure.
His pharmacist who dispenses the methadone loses his job. He opens up shop a few blocks away. The neighbors protest, call the patients crackheads and losers in one of the most egregious community uprisings I've ever seen in this city.
Yeah.
He closes under intimidation. Now all of his patients from that Clark Road pharmacy that stopped dispensing this summer have to go downtown to get their methadone. So instead of a 5-minute walk, 10-minute bus ride, they're looking at 2 hours on the bus. They're under the spotlight downtown. And we have a story in Thursday's edition, Alex Weber and I, about that. We talked to 2 of those patients and about that human toll, and I think that it was really interesting
and I think that
enlightening.
It's easy to lose sight, first, of the patients in these kinds of stories, because the stories sort of stop being about the patients and they become about the politics and the protests, and I think it was smart of you guys to bring the focus back on them, because you know, here's maybe the bottom line in all. Very complicated issue, but maybe the bottom line is this. Maybe fundamentally people don't understand the difference between meth, the drug, crystal meth, and methadone, and why people take methadone.
Yeah, and I'd say the press has. I mean, I heard a guy on the radio, a radio host just the other day, talking about meth clinic, meth clinic, meth clinic. People hear meth, they think Breaking Bad.
And truth is, we
we run
recently, we were doing
headlines.
the same thing, and we're sort of getting schooled up too. And I think we certainly can't be the only people to do it. And maybe it's a bit of a provincial initiative to help people understand that if you are going to a pharmacy to take methadone, you are going there in an effort to break and stay off your addiction. Right. This is healthy.
An expert defined it as a liquid medication designed to mimic opioids like heroin and some painkillers, but without offering the same high. There's no euphoric effect to taking methadone. That being said, your notion that it's a provincial rule, I disagree. There's a guy at AM 980 who's sort of slapping his forehead saying, well, the local health unit is talking about the sex squad. They're ignoring the methadone. Why are they not doing? Why are they not doing a public health campaign? There's lots of questions about their budget too. Surely they can find a few bucks to say, hey everybody, here's what methadone really is.
Absolutely.
That's what it was about. But then again, that's our job too. I think we've started to really do it. I think Randy Richmond started to really do it with his stories a few years ago. And I really believe a lot of the concerns in this city are based on a misunderstanding of what methadone is. And you'll just not to talk over you, but the one guy I spoke to yesterday was a crack addict. Like, that's what he called himself, a crack addict for 2 years. He said methadone has changed his life. He said all he was doing was breaking into houses to steal stuff, stealing bikes on the street to sell, to get money to buy crack. That was after the rent money was gone and the grocery money. Now he takes the methadone every day. It tells his brain you don't need the drugs, and he's been clean for a year. How are you gonna argue with that success story? Your house isn't getting broken into. Think of the savings there.
You can't argue with that story. Maybe it's part of our job and part of the health unit's job or whatever level of government or government body to get those kinds of stories out there so people understand. And this guy admits he was a crack addict. Many, you know better than I do, many of the people taking methadone are on it because they hurt themselves, they hurt their back, they took prescribed legal painkillers and got addicted to those. There's like,
well, some are hooked on heroin too, Joe.
Sure, of course. But there's lots of different reasons to get to a point where you need methadone, and they're not all because you are a crack addict.
Correct. And that brings us to what's afoot next week, which is City Council has a bylaw that they passed a few months ago that dictates where methadone clinics and methadone dispensing pharmacies, so the place that prescribes methadone and the place that fills the prescription, where they can be located, provided they have 40 or more people per day, patients per day. That bylaw is relatively new, and on Tuesday, Council will vote on the first new methadone clinic in the city since passing that bylaw. It's on Warncliffe Road near Old South.
This is the Dairy Queen one.
Next to the Dairy Queen, So as I've said, I'm not sure that adjacent to an ice cream shop is a reason to reject a location. That being said, there are questions about the applicant themselves, the Ontario Addiction Treatment Centers. The work that they do. There are some questions about that, but is this location suitable for a methadone clinic? The planning committee says so. All the rules in that bylaw about where they can and can't be located say so. The planning department supports it. The neighbors, many of the neighbors do not, and I think it's another example of a neighborhood whose reaction, I don't mean to be sort of clacking my tongue and wagging my finger, but I'm just disappointed. I used to live in that neighborhood, and I'm disappointed in the reaction, but I also understand it because people are afraid for their property values. That's what this is all about ultimately, right?
Sure.
And I get that. I would be too, right? I know. But
I don't. It makes perfect sense if everything you're saying is right about it meeting all the bylaw standards,
which it does,
and getting the okay of the planning committee and the planning staff, then it should be okay to pass.
Right.
That doesn't mean it will.
And as part of the recommendation is what could be a fairly controversial cap that the planning staff has instituted that says, yes, you can be here, yes, you can be next to the Dairy Queen, you can be near Old South, but you can't treat more than 200 patients a day.
Right.
And just by way of context for people, the place on Dundas that causes all the consternation near Beale has as many as 800 patients a day. If you have 200 patients a day, I don't think there's going to be a huge issue. If the city can successfully institute that cap and it doesn't get challenged to the Ontario Municipal Board or to the Ontario Human Rights Commission, I don't see a big issue for the neighborhood, for the Dairy Queen. I don't see it.
I guess I agree with you. I think that maybe it's early again, and I'm going right back to what we started this conversation with. I don't think the differences, the sort of education that's necessary has been out there sufficiently that people can, that sort of turn of mind where you hear the word meth and it becomes something other than it really is. I don't think there's been enough work done to, and I don't know who has to do the work, and probably we have to do some of the work so that people understand what a methadone clinic is. And so, yeah, I think there's going to be probably another big fight.
There's going to be lots of big. There's another one on Wellington. There's a place opening on Wellington, which is asking for an exception because one of the bylaw things, one of the bylaw stipulations is you can't be within 300 meters of a school. These guys are saying, well, we're 250 meters. Can you give us a break?
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. But anyway,
right.
Yeah, methadone.
And it's not just this city; it's every city, right? This is one of those hot zones.
Yeah, but this city, this planning department, John Fleming they're the first people. Municipally, the province can't be bothered cleaning up the mess they've created. It's left to municipal governments, and our planning department is leading the way in the province in setting up rules to try to mitigate these neighborhood conflicts. So credit to them.
Yep.
It is a hot issue, but it's very hot in London. It's fascinating. Anyway, it'll be fun to watch, or interesting to watch. So, okay, Chris Bentley.
Chris Bentley.
Stepping down as, no, he's not stepping down. He's not going to run for Liberal leadership, and he's not going to seek re-election in London West.
Yeah, it makes for interesting fodder for who exactly is going to run. There are not many cabinet ministers with any kind of name left to run, so I don't know if this is going to be a coronation for someone.
Like Pupatello, you think?
Pupatello, we haven't heard from our other local minister, Deb Matthews.
What about Gerard Kennedy?
Well, I keep hearing about Gerard Kennedy in the federal. I haven't heard much about him provincially.
Okay.
Sure, someone's going to pop up. I'm beginning to think that it's not going to be somebody who's in the government now. I think particularly many of the most recognizable faces in that Liberal Queen's Park government now are kind of realizing between the gas plants and the e-health and that, they're probably maybe too sort of scarred as a group to really carry the day. They might be able to win a leadership, but can they win a government again? I don't know.
It's really interesting because Bentley wasn't just like another MPP. I mean, it was a romp. It was a romp when he won last time, and that was his third term. McGuinty's big thing was post-secondary education 7 or 8 years ago. Guess who he puts in charge of that?
Yep.
Chris Bentley. He puts him in the Attorney General's office. His labor, then the energy thing is blowing up. He puts Bentley on that. You put your best people in your worst situations.
Absolutely. And pre the gas plant business, I think no one may have been calling him the heir apparent leader, but he certainly would have been in the small group of.
Yeah, he's in the conversation. So it's interesting, but you know what I think?
I think Deb is too, though.
Deb Matthews?
Yeah.
Oh, certainly. Certainly, yeah.
I expect she'll decide not to run, but
But why do you say that?
It's just for the reasons I just said. I think she'll realize that even if she could win the Liberal leadership, the
orange stuff, the
orange stuff, all of it. Some of it in her portfolio, some of it not. I think this government.
It don't look good.
It has come to the end for the sort of McGuinty era, and the end doesn't smell so great. And
I'm just not convinced that Tim Hudak can corral enough voters to form a government.
I think they're probably as worried or more worried about Horwath than Hudak right now.
That's interesting. You know what it made me think of, though? I wasn't think it didn't when I heard Bentley was resigning. It didn't make me think of, oh, who's going to run for Liberal leadership then? It made me think of who's going to run for London mayor in 2014.
That's a very good question.
I don't have any reason to think that, but I thought, he's coming home.
Maybe.
He's escaping this firestorm in Toronto.
Yeah, maybe.
He's politically astute. He's obviously pretty popular in that part of the city.
And whatever sort of tarnish from the gas plant business he's got to wear for the Liberals, and I would argue that not much really, since he came to the portfolio after it all happened. He had to do the dirty work. You know, that won't carry into a.
I think most people here see him as the guy who, like, somebody else ate the meal and he got the check.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, on the gas plant stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, that's actually an interesting thought. If he hasn't had his fill of politics, that might be a good place.
Yeah, and I mean, is Will Fontana seek re-election? I don't know. Nancy, Joe Swan, Paul Hubert, Pearson. There's lots of names.
That's a good conversation for another day.
But here we are. It's still 2 years away. So anyway.
Yeah.
And did you want to talk about the Southwest Area Plan? This is a blueprint for development in the southwest part of the city, which is a huge quadrant of land that's going to be developed over the next 20 years.
Yeah.
I think everybody just fell asleep as I was describing it, but
that's part of the problem.
But that's part of the problem. Yeah. And to you were saying earlier that you think that this is precisely the kind of issue that people should be paying attention to.
Yeah, and it's very hard to get people to pay attention to it, though we try, and we're going to keep trying next week, because I think it's one of those decisions that it's easy for them to kind of slip by, not quite unnoticed, but without the average Londoner having thought much through the ramifications of it. But this is really setting a template for developing a very large swath of the city. And as Randy Richmond said in his story the other day, it's really like setting no template at all. It's the same old template. And I know at the beginning of this process there's a real hope that this would be a sort of new harbinger of a new kind of planning to make sure we don't end up with another Wellington Road or, you know,
another Wellington Road that's a bit of a planning mess. It doesn't look good.
Or a big, you know, another big box quadrant. And so, you know, I guess sort of in some part at least in a push by the mayor, and so be it. You want to have a tax freeze, you got to get some assessment. You know, it seems to me the guiding principle has been, let's get people building as quickly as we can to get some property taxes coming in.
Gentlemen, start your bulldozers.
What the thing looks like, be damned.
Yeah.
And I think the city as a whole could easily live to, rue the day? Is that what you do? Do you rue a day?
You would rue a day.
Rue the day 10, 15, 20 years from now. Be nice for it to be wrong, and you only get so many chances to say, here's a big old empty plot of many, many acres that we can turn into the kind of city we want, and we're just about out of them. And I think this was probably very close to one of our last.
You know what SWAP is? The Southwest Area Plan? What you told me it was? It is what you once described to me as an important but boring story that we have to put on the front page because it's so important, but we know that readers are not naturally inclined to read about it because it's complicated and it's hard to understand.
And you know, we've seen this over and over again. You look up at sort of Fanshawe High Park area now, and we wrote some stories about it, that all swum through, and probably the area of the city people are complaining about most now is driving through that sort of personality-less. Well, you got to go to Old Navy or some other store, you're good.
It's a good store.
Especially if you got to go to 2 or 3 stores that are right there too.
Old Navy's a good store.
Sure, I agree. Get my jeans there all the time.
Right.
Cheap, but you know, it's not an area anybody's very proud of, and you don't really.
You don't want to replicate that
in your thinking while you're passing a few little planning bylaws over here. And I think this could be the exact same sort of thing.
Okay, thanks,
Having
Joe.
said that, I get my jeans at Old Navy.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, well, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time here at lfpress.com.
Cheers.